This is an interactive visualization of about 100 years of daily temperature data from about 2,000 weather stations around the United States. What's happening is as I mouse around, as the cursor moves over one of the stations, the graphs in the upper right corner show the data from that station. The map's interactive, so we can zoom in order to explain more about the data and what we're seeing. Let's zoom in on one particular station. So here's New York City, and this is the station in Central Park. So if I click on that station, then the program locks in on that data and no longer changes if I accidentally hit a different station. And then to explain what this graph is showing, I'm first going to drill in and look at a more detailed view of the data, which I can do by clicking on this little pop-out icon right here. So if I click that, then it goes and fetches the actual daily data from that station, starting back actually just before 1900. And this is in an interactive graph. I can grab the graph with the mouse and move it back and forth or up and down. And the scroll wheel lets me zoom in to see more detail of the data. And again, this is daily data. As I zoom in, at some point it switches to the actual daily bars, so that if I zoom in to one particular day, like right here is April 20th, 1983, and that's showing the bottom of the bar was the low temperature for that day, so 36 or so, and the top of the bar was the high, which looks like it was about 44. But if I zoom out so that we can see a lot more of the data like it started out, these two, what look like horizontal lines, they're actually not quite lines and they're not quite horizontal, but the red and the cyan line that run through that, those are annual averages. So for each year, I computed an average of all the values for that year. The red is the average of the daily maximum across the year, and the cyan is the average of the daily minimum. And if you zoom all the way out to look at the whole 100 years, then you can imagine computing a least squares fit or best fit trend line through each of those long-term average time series. And that is exactly what's being shown in the black inset graph up here. The red one is the daily maximum, the bottom cyan one is the daily minimum, and the white is simply the average of those two. So if we zoom back out to look at most of the United States, now as I mouse around, you see the data changing as the cursor moves. The colors of the dots in the map are based on the slopes of those lines. So right now, the program is set to show color according to the slope of the white line, the average, but that's controlled by this little radio button over here. So if I click this Tmax, now the colors are chosen based on the Tmax slope. This little square inset graph here simply shows the trend lines themselves, but with their slope magnified by 10, so that it's exaggerated to make it easier to see the relative relationship. So that's it. It's online at this address. You can play with it and get in touch if you have any questions.